I didn't want to be alone anymore. She said we could build something, a life, a home. I paid for the concrete, the rebar, the walls. I watched it grow, photo by photo, from 10,000 miles away. But when I flew in early to surprise her, her cousin opened the gate and told me it was his house. I couldn't even find her after that. My name is Howard McKay. I'm 67 years old, retired carpenter from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is my confession about love, trust, and $20,000 that built someone else's dream. The wheels touched down at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, and my heart was hammering like I was 25 again. Manila's humid air hit me the second I stepped off that plane, but I barely noticed. I was too busy thinking about her face when she'd see me standing at our front door. Our door, the one I'd been paying for, brick by brick, for 8 months. Surprise visits are the best kind of romance, Howie, I whispered to myself, wheeling my suitcase through customs. That's what she used to tell me during our video calls. When you love someone, you just show up. Well, here I was, showing up. The small velvet box in my jacket pocket felt heavier than my entire suitcase. I'd been carrying it for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. What could be more perfect than proposing in the house we built together? The taxi driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror as we crawled through Manila traffic. First time in Philippines, sir? He asked. No, I said, though that wasn't exactly true. I'd been here once before, 3 years ago, but that was just a quick tourist thing. This time was different. This time I was coming home. To Annalyn. To our life. My girlfriend lives in Tacloban. I told him. We're building a house together. He nodded and smiled. Ah, very nice, sir. Filipino girls, they take good care of foreign boyfriend. I spent the entire flight from Milwaukee to Manila replaying our last video call. The walls are almost finished, Howie, she'd said, holding up her phone to show me the progress. Just need the roofing now, then we can move in. Her smile was so bright, so genuine. I can't wait to wake up next to you every morning. Neither could I. 67 years old and I felt like a teenager again. After Margaret died, I thought that part of my life was over. Then Annalyn found me on Facebook, started commenting on my woodworking photos. You have such talented hands, she wrote. That was 18 months ago. The domestic flight to Tacloban was bumpy, but I didn't care. I kept checking my phone, making sure it was on airplane mode. She couldn't know I was coming. This had to be perfect. I'd even practiced what I was going to say. Annalyn, I couldn't wait another day to be with you. Will you marry me? Simple. Honest. From the heart. When we landed in Tacloban, the late afternoon sun was painting everything golden. I grabbed a tricycle from the airport, those little motorcycle taxis that Annalyn always said were the best way to get around. Sitio Paulo, I told the driver, showing him the address on my phone. You know this area? He nodded. Yes, sir, quiet place, good for family. The ride took 40 minutes, winding through narrow roads past rice fields and small houses. My stomach was doing flips. In less than an hour, I'd be holding her, kissing her, proposing in our bedroom, the one with the big window facing the mountains, just like in the photos she'd sent me. Almost there, the driver called back. I could see it now. The blue gate, the white walls, the red roof tiles, exactly like the pictures. My hands were shaking as I paid the driver. This was it. Our moment. Our beginning. I walked up to the gate, suitcase wheels bumping over the uneven ground. The house looked perfect. Better than perfect. It looked like home. I could hear voices inside. Maybe Annalyn was cooking dinner. Maybe she was on a video call with one of her students. I reached for the gate latch, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. This was the surprise of a lifetime. This was love. I pushed open the blue gate and stepped into the small front yard. The mango tree was exactly where she said it would be, casting shade over the concrete path. Everything matched her photos perfectly, the potted plants along the fence, the small stone pathway, even the color of the walls. I could hear laughter inside the house. She was home. My Annalyn was finally within reach. A young man appeared at the front door, maybe early 20s, wearing a basketball jersey and shorts. He looked at me with confusion, then at my suitcase, then back at me. Sir? He said in English. Can I help you? I smiled, feeling a bit embarrassed. Of course Annalyn had family over. She'd mentioned her cousin Joel before. I'm looking for Annalyn, I said. Annalyn Rosales. This is her house, right? The young man's expression shifted to something I couldn't quite read. Sir, he said slowly, that's my house. He pointed behind him. My wife's inside. We live here. I laughed, thinking there was some misunderstanding. Maybe he didn't recognize me from the photos. No, I said, pulling out my phone. This is Annalyn's house, see? She sent me this picture last week. I showed him the photo of our bedroom, the one we'd planned to share. She lives here. We built this together. He looked at the photo, then back at me. His face was kind, but firm. Sir, I don't know what to tell you. This is my house. My wife and I, we live here. Annalyn, she comes sometimes to visit, take pictures. But she doesn't live here. A woman appeared behind him, holding a small child. She said something to him in what I assumed was Waray, the local language. He nodded and turned back to me. My wife says maybe you're confused. There are many houses that look the same. Confused? The word came out sharper than I intended. I'm not confused. I paid for this house. I sent money for the lot, the construction, the materials, $20,000. The number hung in the air like a physical thing. The young man, Joel, I realized looked genuinely sorry for me. Sir, I don't know about that. But this is my house. I have the deed, the papers. Maybe you should call Annalyn. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking. This was impossible. There had to be some mistake. Maybe this was a different house. Maybe I had the wrong address. But no, I could see the mountain view from the back window, just like in her photos. I could see the neighbor's blue house next door, the one she'd complained about because they played music too loud. I need to call her, I said, more to myself than to Joel. She'll explain everything. I dialed her number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. In Tagalog. I tried again. Same thing. She's not answering, I said. Joel looked at me with what I now recognized as pity. Sir, maybe you should sit down. You look tired from traveling. He gestured to a plastic chair under the mango tree. You want some water? I sat down because my legs suddenly felt weak. This couldn't be happening. This was our house, our dream, our future. When did you last see Annalyn? I asked. Joel conferred with his wife in Waray again. Maybe 2 weeks ago. She came to take some pictures. She said they were for her boyfriend in America. My heart stopped. That's me. I'm her boyfriend, the one in America. But even as I said it, something felt wrong. Why would she need to take pictures if she lived here? Why didn't she just video call me from inside? The child in his wife's arms started crying, and she took him inside. Joel stayed with me, leaning against the doorframe. Sir, I don't want to cause trouble. But Annalyn, she doesn't live here. Never has. This has been my family's house for 6 months now. We bought the lot, did the construction. I'm a welder. My wife sells vegetables in the market. We saved for years for this place. But the photos, I said weakly. She sent me photos of the construction. The foundation being poured. The walls going up. Room by room. Joel nodded. Yes, she took many pictures. She said she was showing her family overseas how nice the neighborhood is. We thought it was sweet. Sweet. The word twisted in my stomach like a knife. She never mentioned having a boyfriend here, living with someone. Sir, Joel said gently, Annalyn has a boyfriend. But not you, local guy, works at the port. They come here together sometimes, I thought. I thought she was just helping her family with money from abroad. Many girls do that. The world tilted sideways. I gripped the plastic chair arms so hard my knuckles went white. What do you mean, helping her family? Joel's wife appeared in the doorway again, said something to him in Waray. He nodded and looked back at me. Sir, maybe you should call Annalyn again, or go to her real house. She lives in the city, near Robinson's Mall, about 20 minutes from here. I stood up so fast the chair almost fell over. She lives in the city? Joel nodded. Yes, sir. Always has. This is just where she comes to visit, take pictures, relax on weekends. I stared at the house. Our house. The one I'd watched being built photo by photo. The one where I'd imagined proposing tonight. The one where I'd planned to spend the rest of my life. I need to go, I said. Joel looked concerned. Sir, you have somewhere to stay tonight? I didn't. I hadn't thought that far ahead. This was supposed to be home. Back in my hotel room that night, a cheap place near downtown Tacloban, I couldn't stop staring at my phone. All those messages, all those photos, all those promises. I scrolled back to the beginning, to when the house was just an idea in her mind. It was March of last year when she first brought it up during one of our video calls. "Howie," she'd said, her face glowing on my laptop screen. "I've been thinking about our future together." Our future. Those words made my heart skip every time she said them. "I found the perfect lot, baby," she continued, holding up her phone to show me some empty land surrounded by green. "It's in my cousin's neighborhood. Quiet, safe, close to family. We could build something beautiful here. Just you and me." I remember leaning closer to the screen, squinting at the shaky video. "It looks nice, sweetheart. How much would something like that cost?" She laughed, that musical laugh that made me feel 20 years younger. "Oh, Howie, you're so practical. That's why I love you." She'd done her research. Had it all planned out. "The lot is only 250,000 pesos, she said. That's about $5,000 American. Then we can build slowly, as we can afford it. No rush, no stress. Just our dream growing piece by piece." $5,000. I'd spent more than that on my truck. For a piece of land where we could build our life together, it seemed like a bargain. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I asked her. "I mean, it's a big commitment, for both of us." Her face got serious, the way it did when she talked about important things. "Howie, I've never been more sure of anything. I love you. I want to build a life with you. But if you're not ready—" "No," I interrupted. "I'm ready. I want this too." And I did. God help me, I really did. The next morning, I walked to the Western Union. $5,000. I'd never sent that much money overseas before. The clerk, a young Filipina woman, asked if I was sure about the amount. "It's for my girlfriend," I told her proudly. "We're buying land together, building a house." She smiled. "That's wonderful, sir. Filipino girls, they make good wives, very loyal." Loyal. I held on to that word like a lifeline. 2 days later, Annalyn called me, crying happy tears. "Howie, I can't believe you did this for me. For us. The land is ours now. I'm standing on it right now." She flipped the camera around and showed me dirt and grass and trees. "Can you see it? Our future home?" I could see it. In my mind, I was already there with her, planning where to put the kitchen, where to put our bedroom. "When can we start building?" I asked. She laughed through her tears. "Soon, baby, very soon." The construction began 3 months later. She sent me photos every few days. First, the lot being cleared, then the foundation being marked out with stakes and string. "This is where our kitchen will be," she said in one video, standing in what looked like an empty field. "And over here, our bedroom, with a big window so we can watch the sunrise together." I saved every photo, every video, created a folder on my computer called Our House. Our House. The foundation took 6 weeks. She said the soil was harder than expected, that they needed to dig deeper, use more concrete. "It's going to cost a little more, Howie," she said during one of our calls. "Maybe 3,000 more, but it'll be stronger, safer, better for us." 3,000 more. I didn't hesitate. What was money compared to our future? I sent it the same day. The walls went up slowly. Post and beam construction, she explained. Concrete blocks filled with rebar. "The strongest house in the neighborhood," she promised. She sent photos of workers in hard hats, mixing cement, laying blocks. In one photo, she was wearing a hard hat too, giving a thumbs up to the camera. "The foreman," she wrote. "I made it my desktop wallpaper. My beautiful Annalyn, building our dream." By Christmas, the walls were up and the roof was going on. Red ceramic tiles, just like I'd suggested. "It looks like a Spanish house," she said in her video message. "Very romantic. Very us." She was right. It looked exactly like the house I'd dreamed of retiring to. Not too big, not too fancy, just perfect for 2 people in love. The final payment was for the interior. Plumbing, electrical, flooring, paint. "Just 8,000 more, Howie," she said. "Then it's done. Then you can come home." Home. That word meant everything to me. I'd lived in the same house in Milwaukee for 37 years. Raised my kids there with Margaret. Buried her from there. But it had never felt like home since she died. Home was wherever Annalyn was. I sent the 8,000. The next week, she sent me photos of the finished house. White walls, red roof, blue gate, a small front yard with a mango tree, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window facing the mountains. Our bedroom, she said in the video, standing in the larger room. This is where we'll wake up together every morning. I cried watching that video. At 66 years old, I sat in my kitchen in Milwaukee and cried like a child. When are you coming home, Howie? She asked during our next call. Home. There was that word again. Soon. I promised. Very soon. But she was always busy. Teaching online. Helping her family. Dealing with paperwork. Just a few more weeks, she'd say. I want everything perfect for you. I was patient. Love requires patience. I'd waited this long to find her. I could wait a little longer to hold her. But I couldn't wait anymore. That's why I'd gotten on that plane. That's why I was supposed to be sleeping in our bed tonight instead of this hard hotel mattress. That's why the engagement ring was burning a hole in my pocket instead of sparkling on her finger. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And tomorrow, I was going to find out what. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Joel's face. That mixture of confusion and pity. The way he'd said, "That's my house, sir," like it was the most obvious thing in the world. When dawn broke through the thin hotel curtains, I was already dressed and ready to find answers. First, I called every number I had for her main cell phone. The backup number she'd given me for emergencies. Even the landline she claimed belonged to her family. Every single one went straight to voicemail or rang endlessly. I tried messaging her on Facebook, WhatsApp, Viber, even Instagram. All delivered, none read, none answered. The hotel front desk clerk was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. When I asked about Robinson's Mall, she lit up. "Oh yes, sir, very popular. Many shops, restaurants. You go shopping?" I nodded. "Something like that. How far is it?" She called a tricycle for me and gave the driver directions. 20 minutes later, I was standing in front of a busy shopping center, completely lost. Where do you even start looking for someone in a city of 250,000 people? I tried calling her again from the mall's food court. Still nothing. A security guard noticed me looking distressed and approached. "Sir, you need help?" His English was better than I expected. "I'm looking for someone. A woman named Annalyn Rosales. She's supposed to live somewhere near here." He shook his head. "Sir, there are many people with that name. You have her address?" I didn't. In all our time together, all our planning, she'd never given me her actual address. Only the house. Our house. The one that turned out to belong to someone else. "Maybe you ask at the barangay hall," the guard suggested. "They have records of residents." The barangay hall was a small government office a few blocks away. The official behind the desk looked at me skeptically when I explained what I needed. "You are family?" she asked. "Boyfriend," I said. She looked even more skeptical. "Sir, we cannot give personal information to non-family members. Privacy law." I pulled out my phone and showed her our photos together. Selfies we'd taken during video calls. Screenshots of our messages. "Please," I said. "I just flew here from America. I need to find her." The woman studied the photos for a long time. Finally, she sighed. "There are 3 Annalyn Rosales in this district. I cannot give you addresses, but I can tell you if any of them match your girlfriend." She showed me 3 ID photos on her computer screen. The third one was her. My Annalyn. Older than in her photos, heavier, but definitely her. "That's her," I said, my heart pounding. "Can you at least tell me what street?" "Sir, I already told you. I cannot, please." The desperation in my voice surprised even me. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk to her. I've been sending money. We were planning to get married." She looked at me for a long moment, then at the photos on my phone. "Sir, that woman, she is married already, has been for 3 years." The words hit me like a physical blow. Married, for 3 years. That meant she was married when she first messaged me. Married when she said she loved me. Married when we planned our house. Our house that was never really ours. "Are you sure?" I asked weakly. The woman nodded. Very sure, sir. Her husband, he works at the port. They have 2 children. 2 children. In all our conversations, all our video calls, she'd never mentioned children. Never mentioned a husband. The woman behind the desk was looking at me with genuine sympathy now. Sir, I think maybe you should go back to your hotel. Rest. Think about this situation. But I couldn't rest. Not yet. Is there anything else you can tell me? Anything at all? She looked around the office, then leaned closer. Sir, this happens sometimes. Filipino women, they talk to foreign men online. For money, for help. But it doesn't always mean love. She paused. Your girlfriend, she requested change of address last month. Moved out of this district. I don't know where. Moved out. Of course she had. Right around the time I'd started talking about visiting, I walked back to the mall in a daze. Found a bench in the food court and just sat there, staring at my phone. At all our messages, all our photos, all our plans. How could it all be fake? The way she'd looked at me during our video calls. The way she'd said, I love you, Howie, every single night for 18 months. The way she'd cried when I sent the first payment for the house. An elderly Filipino man at the next table was eating by himself. He noticed me sitting there, obviously distressed. You okay, sir? He asked in accented English. I must have looked pathetic because he moved to my table without invitation. Tourist? I shook my head. My girlfriend lives here. I came to surprise her. He nodded knowingly. Filipino girlfriend? When I confirmed, his expression grew sad. Sir, can I ask, you send money? I told him everything. About Annalyn, about the house, about the $20,000. He listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Sir, he finally said, my name is Manrico. I used to work in Dubai. I see this many times there. Foreign workers, they fall in love with women back home. Send money. But the women. He shrugged. Sometimes the love is real. Sometimes it's not. How do I know which one this is? I asked him. Manrico looked at me with grandfatherly compassion. Sir, if you have to ask, you already know the answer. He was right. Deep down, I'd known something was wrong for months. The way she'd always have excuses when I wanted to visit. The way she'd never video call from the house, only from what she claimed was her office or her friend's place. The way she'd always need just a little more money for just one more thing. What should I do? I asked him. Manrico stood up and patted my shoulder. Go home, sir. Back to America. Forget this woman. There are good Filipino women, honest women. But this one. He shook his head. This one will break your heart if you let her. He was right about that too. She already had. I spent the rest of the day wandering around Tacloban, calling her number every hour. By evening, I'd accepted the truth. She wasn't going to answer. She wasn't going to explain. She wasn't going to apologize or give me closure or tell me it was all a misunderstanding. She was just gone. Like she'd never existed at all. The pension house I checked into that night was even cheaper than the hotel. Bare concrete walls, a single bed with sheets that smelled like bleach, and a window that wouldn't close properly. But it didn't matter. I wasn't planning to stay in the Philippines much longer. What was the point? The woman I came to see had vanished like smoke. I sat on that hard bed and went through every form of communication we'd ever used. Facebook Messenger showed my last message as delivered but never read. WhatsApp was the same. Viber, nothing. I even tried Skype, the app where we'd had our first real conversation 2 years ago. Her account was still active, but she was permanently offline. It was like she'd digitally deleted herself from my life. Her niece Mara had messaged me a few times over the past year. Sweet kid, maybe 16, always thanking me for the school supplies and clothing I'd send through Annalyn. I'd sent maybe $1,000 worth of stuff through the month's backpacks, shoes, textbooks. Annalyn said her family was struggling, that my help meant everything. I tried messaging Mara now. Hi, I'm in the Philippines looking for your Tita Annalyn. Do you know where she is? The message was delivered. Never read. By morning, I'd tried everyone in her extended family that I could remember. Her supposed cousin who lived in Manila, her friend from college who sometimes appeared in the background of our video calls, even her old English student who'd friend requested me on Facebook months ago. Nothing. It was like they'd all gotten the same memo. Don't talk to the American. I decided to go back to the house one more time. Maybe Joel had remembered something. Maybe Annalyn had shown up looking for me. I caught a tricycle back to Sitio Palo, my heart doing strange things in my chest. Part of me still hoped I'd find her there waiting, with some reasonable explanation for everything. The rest of me knew better. Joel was working in his small front yard when I arrived, weeding around the base of the mango tree. Our mango tree. The one that was supposed to give us shade while we drank coffee on the porch every morning. He looked up when he heard the tricycle pull away. "Oh, sir, you came back." There was no surprise in his voice. Maybe he'd expected this. "I couldn't find her," I said. Joel nodded and gestured to the plastic chair from yesterday. "Sit, sir. My wife made coffee." I didn't really want coffee, but I accepted the cup when she brought it out. It was good coffee, strong and sweet. The kind Annalyn said she'd make for me every morning when I lived here. When we lived here. "Joel," I said, "can I ask you something honestly?" "Of course, sir. How long have you known that I existed? That Annalyn had been talking to someone in America?" Joel looked uncomfortable. "Sir, she never told us about you specifically, but we knew she was talking to foreign men online. For money. She wasn't secretive about it." "Foreign men, plural." My stomach dropped. "More than one?" Joel's wife appeared in the doorway and said something to him in Waray. He nodded and turned back to me. "Sir, my wife says I should tell you the truth. Annalyn, she has maybe 3, 4 foreign boyfriends, all sending money, all think they are special. 3 or 4. I was just one of several. Just another lonely old man with a credit card and too much trust. Did she ever mention building a house with any of us?" Joel looked genuinely sorry for me now. "Sir, she told us she was helping her family with foreign money. She said she was teaching English online, had students who paid well. We never knew about house building. Of course she didn't tell them. They might have felt guilty about taking money from someone who thought he was building his home." I pulled out my phone and showed him some of the construction photos she'd sent me. Joel studied them carefully. "Sir, these photos, they are from when we were building. But Annalyn, she just came to watch sometimes, take pictures. She said she wanted to show her family how nice the neighborhood was becoming. She documented someone else's dream and sold it to me as our own. The money I sent," I said. $20,000. Where did that go?" Joel shrugged helplessly. "Sir, we never received any foreign money. We paid for everything ourselves. My savings from welding jobs, my wife's money from selling vegetables. It took us 2 years to save enough. 2 years of their hard work, their sacrifice, their dream. And she'd stolen their photos to sell to me." Joel's wife brought out a small photo album. "She wants to show you something," Joel translated. The album contained photos of the house being built, but from different angles than the ones Annalyn had sent me. In these photos, I could see Joel working alongside the construction crew, his wife bringing them water and snacks, their children playing in the background. This was their story, their home, their life. "Why didn't you stop her from taking the photos?" I asked. Joel looked confused by the question. "Sir, we thought she was proud of our house, wanted to show her family. We were happy she liked it. If we knew she was using the photos to trick people." He shook his head. "We would never allow that." I sat there under the mango tree, drinking coffee in someone else's dream. The house looked even more beautiful in the morning light. Well built, carefully planned, clearly loved. Everything I'd imagined it would be. Everything I'd paid for it to be. Except it was never mine. It was never ours. It was Joel and his wife's reward for 2 years of hard work and saving. And Annalyn had stolen their story to break my heart. "Sir," Joel said gently, "you seem like good man, kind man, but you should go home now. Forget this woman. She is not worth your sadness." His wife nodded and said something in Waray. Joel translated. "She says there are good women in Philippines, honest women, but Annalyn is not one of them. You deserve better." I finished my coffee and stood up to leave. Joel walked me to the gate. "Sir, I'm sorry this happened to you. If we had known." I shook my head. "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." But as I walked away from that house, that beautiful, heartbreaking house, I couldn't help but think that someone should have known. Someone should have stopped her. Someone should have protected me from this. That someone should have been me. That evening, back in my pension house room, I did something I'd been avoiding for 24 hours. I opened my banking app and looked at all the transfers I'd made to the Philippines over the past 18 months. The numbers were all there, stark and undeniable. Western Union, MoneyGram, bank wire transfers, 5,000 here, 3,000 there, 8,000 for the final construction phase. Smaller amounts for her family emergencies, her niece's school fees, medical bills for her sick mother. The first transfer was March 15th, last year. $5,000 for the land. I remembered that day perfectly. It was a Tuesday morning. I'd been nervous walking into the Western Union office in downtown Milwaukee. The clerk, a young black woman with braided hair, had looked at the amount and asked, "You sure about this, honey?" I'd been sure. Absolutely, completely sure. I'd called Annalyn as soon as I got home from sending it. She answered on the first ring, which should have been my first clue that something was wrong. It was 11 at night in the Philippines. Who answers their phone immediately at 11 at night unless they're waiting for it? "Howie," she'd practically shouted. "Did you really do it? Did you really send the money?" "I told you I would," I said, feeling proud of myself. Proud that I could provide for her, protect her, build something with her. "Check your Western Union in the morning. It should be there." She started crying. Happy tears, she said. "Howie, I can't believe you trust me this much. I love you so much. We're really doing this. We're really building our life together. Our life." Those words meant everything to me then. I'd lived alone in my house in Milwaukee for 3 years after Margaret died. 3 years of eating dinner by myself, watching TV by myself, going to bed in an empty house. Then Annalyn came into my life and suddenly I had a reason to wake up every morning. Someone to share my day with. Someone to build a future with. The second transfer was 2 months later. $3,000 for foundation work. She'd sent me a video message from the construction site. At least, what I thought was the construction site. Now I realize it was probably Joel's construction site, and she was just visiting to document someone else's progress. In the video, she was wearing a hard hat and a bright smile. "Look, Howie, our foundation is being poured right now." She turned the camera to show concrete trucks and workers. "This is where our bedroom will be, where we'll hold each other every night." I'd watched that video dozens of times, saved it to my phone, my computer, my cloud storage. It was proof that our love was real, that our future was taking shape. I'd even shown it to my neighbor Bob when he'd asked what I was doing with all my retirement money. "Building a life with someone special," I'd told him proudly. Bob had looked skeptical, but I'd brushed off his concern. Bob was divorced and bitter. He couldn't understand what Annalyn and I had. The third transfer was the biggest one. $8,000 for roofing, plumbing, electrical, and interior work. That one had hurt my savings account, but Annalyn had been so excited. "Just this one more payment, Howie, and then it's done. Then you can come home to me." Home to me. She had such a beautiful way of making everything sound romantic, meaningful, destined. But there were other transfers too. Smaller ones that I'd almost forgotten about. $200 when her mother got sick and needed medicine. $500 when her niece needed school supplies and uniforms. $300 when their water pump broke and the family had no clean water. $100 here and there for internet bills so we could keep video calling. Birthday money for her niece. Christmas money for her family. When I added it all up, sitting there on that hard pension house bed, the total was staggering. $23,450. Almost $24,000 sent to someone who turned out to be married with children. Someone who was running the same scam on 3 or 4 other men just like me. The worst part wasn't the money, though. The worst part was looking back at all my messages to her after each transfer. "I hope this helps, sweetheart. Anything for you, my love. We're building something beautiful together. I can't wait to hold you in our house." Each message more naive than the last. Each one showing just how completely she'd fooled me. I found the video she'd sent after the final transfer. She was holding a small handmade sign that read, "Welcome home, Howie," in colorful letters. Behind her was the finished house, Joel's house looking perfect in the afternoon sunlight. "I made this for you, baby," she said to the camera, tears streaming down her face. "I can't wait to hold this sign when you walk through our front door for the first time." I'd saved that video too. Watched it whenever I missed her, whenever I doubted whether what we had was real. The tears looked so genuine. The happiness seemed so authentic. How could someone fake that level of emotion? How could someone look into a camera and lie so completely while crying real tears? But now I understood. She wasn't crying from happiness. She was crying from guilt, maybe even from fear of getting caught. Those weren't tears of love, they were tears of someone who knew exactly how much damage she was about to cause. The phone records showed something else too. Our video calls had become less frequent over the past 3 months. What used to be daily conversations had become twice a week, then once a week. She'd always had excuses. Work was busy. Her internet was unstable. Family obligations. But now I realized the truth. She'd been pulling away because she knew I'd eventually want to visit. She knew the house of cards would eventually collapse. I closed my banking app and stared at the ceiling of that dingy room. $24,000. It wasn't life-changing money for me. My carpenter's pension and Margaret's life insurance had left me comfortable enough. But it wasn't pocket change either. It was a year of living expenses. It was a new car. It was a dozen nice vacations I could have taken by myself, instead of sending money to a woman who was probably laughing about me with her real family. More than the money, though, was the time. 18 months of my life spent building a relationship with someone who didn't exist. 18 months of planning a future that was never going to happen. 18 months of love poured into a void. At my age, 18 months felt like a significant portion of whatever time I had left. I thought about calling my daughter Jennifer back in Milwaukee. She'd never liked the idea of me sending money to someone I'd never met in person. "Dad," she'd said during our last phone conversation, "promise me you'll be careful. These romance scams are everywhere." I'd been offended that she'd even suggested it. "Jenny, this isn't a scam. I know the difference between love and deception." Apparently, I didn't. Apparently, a 67-year-old man who'd been married for 34 years, who'd raised 2 children, who'd run his own carpentry business for decades, could still be fooled by pretty words and fake tears. The thought made me feel ancient and naive at the same time. But the hardest part was admitting that some piece of me had known, not consciously, but somewhere deep down, I'd sensed that something was off. The way she'd never give me a straight answer about when I could visit, the way she'd change the subject whenever I asked about her daily life. The way our video calls always came from the same generic background, never the house, never her bedroom, never anywhere that looked like a real home. I'd ignored those red flags because I wanted the dream more than I wanted the truth. I'd wanted to believe that a beautiful 29-year-old woman could fall in love with a aging widower from Wisconsin. I'd wanted to believe that love could happen through a computer screen. I'd wanted to believe that I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life alone. And maybe that was the cruelest part of all. She hadn't just stolen my money. She'd stolen my hope. I spent most of the next day walking around Tacloban city, not really looking for anything, just moving. The heat was oppressive, but I didn't care. The sweat dripping down my back, the humidity making every breath feel thick, it all seemed appropriate somehow. This whole trip had been a march through hell. Might as well feel like it. By evening, I was back in my pension house room, staring at my phone. I'd been carrying it all day, checking it every few minutes, hoping for some sign that Annalyn would reach out, that she'd explain everything, that there was some reasonable misunderstanding we could work through together. But the screen stayed dark. No messages, no calls, no explanations. I opened our chat thread one more time, scrolled through months of messages, her good morning texts, her good night wishes, photos of her breakfast, her students, her smile, videos of her singing happy birthday to me back in October, screenshots of apartment listings she'd found for when you visit. All of it looked so real. All of it felt so genuine. At 11:47 p.m., I finally typed a message. My hands were shaking, but my mind was clear for the first time since I'd arrived in the Philippines. "Annalyn, I'm in Tacloban. I went to the house. I met Joel and his wife. I know it's not your house. I know you don't live there. I know about the money." I stared at those words for 10 minutes before hitting send. The message showed, delivered, immediately. Then, a few seconds later, it changed to read. My heart started pounding. She was there. She was online. She was reading my message right now. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, nothing. Just that devastating silence that's somehow louder than any argument could ever be. I typed another message. "You could have told me the truth. About the house. About your family. About everything. I still would have helped if you needed money. But not like this. Not with lies. Read immediately. No response. I could see her status at the bottom of the chat, last seen just now. She was there. She was reading everything. She was choosing not to respond. That hurt worse than any explanation could have. I loved you, I typed. I really, genuinely loved you. I thought we were building something together. I thought you loved me too. Read immediately. Still, nothing. Was any of it real? Any of the feelings? Any of the conversations? Or was it all just business for you? Still nothing. But I could see she was still online, still reading, still choosing silence. I tried one more time. I'm not angry, Annalyn. I'm just sad. Sad for both of us. Sad for what we could have had if you'd been honest. I hope you're happy. I hope your real family is safe and healthy. I hope the money helped with whatever you really needed it for. Read. Nothing. I watched her status change from online to last seen 2 minutes ago to last seen 5 minutes ago. She was gone. Really, truly gone this time. Not just physically absent but emotionally departed. She'd read my heart being broken in real time and felt nothing worth responding to. I set the phone down and walked to the small window. Outside, Tacloban was settling into nighttime. Street lights were flickering on. Families were gathering for dinner. Real families with real relationships built on truth instead of fantasy. I thought about Joel and his wife, probably putting their children to bed in the house I'd watched being built. Their house, their life, their honest, simple, beautiful reality. Then I did something I hadn't done since Margaret died. I cried. Really cried. Not the quiet tears I'd shed looking at Annalyn's photos or watching her videos. This was deeper. Messier. The kind of crying that comes from the bottom of your soul when you finally admit that something precious is gone forever. I cried for the money, yes. But mostly I cried for the time. For the hope. For the future I'd imagined so clearly that it felt like a memory. I cried for the mornings I'd wake up excited to see her messages. For the evenings we'd planned to spend together on the porch of our house. For the retirement I'd redesigned around loving someone who was never really there. When the tears finally stopped, I picked up my phone one more time. There were no new messages. Her status still showed last seen 47 minutes ago. But I noticed something else. She'd changed her profile picture. Instead of the smiling selfie she'd used for months, it was now a generic sunset photo. No face, no person. Just an empty sky. Even digitally, she was disappearing. I opened a new message and typed one final thing. Goodbye, Annalyn. I hope you find whatever you're really looking for. I hit send without checking if she read it. I didn't want to know. Then I did something I should have done months ago, when my daughter first warned me about romance scams, when my neighbor Bob first looked skeptical, when that little voice in my head first whispered that something was wrong. I blocked her number, unfriended her on Facebook, deleted her from WhatsApp, Viber, Skype, and every other platform we'd used to build our fantasy relationship. It took maybe 3 minutes to erase 18 months of digital connection. 3 minutes to end what I'd thought was the love of my life. My phone felt lighter afterward. Or maybe that was just my heart, finally letting go of something that had never really been there to hold. The flight back to Milwaukee felt longer than the trip over. Not because of the hours, it was the same brutal 26-hour journey through multiple time zones, but because I was returning to a different life than the one I'd left. Going to the Philippines, I'd been a man in love, flying toward his future. Coming back, I was just a lonely widower who'd learned an expensive lesson about trust. Jennifer picked me up at Mitchell International Airport. She took one look at my face and knew everything without me saying a word. "Oh, Dad," she said, pulling me into a hug right there in baggage claim. "I'm so sorry." I'd called her from Manila during my layover, given her the basic outline. Romance scam, fake house, $24,000. She'd listened without saying, "I told you so," which I appreciated more than she knew. The ride home was quiet. Milwaukee in early fall looked exactly the same as when I'd left 5 days earlier, but I felt like I'd been gone for months. The familiar streets, the neighborhood bar where I sometimes grabbed dinner, the hardware store where I'd bought supplies for projects around my house, it all looked smaller somehow, more ordinary, like I'd come back from some strange dream to find reality waiting exactly where I'd left it. "You want to come over for dinner?" Jennifer asked as we pulled into my driveway. I looked at my house, the same house I'd shared with Margaret, the same house I'd been so eager to leave behind for a new life in the Philippines, and shook my head. "Thanks, sweetheart, but I need some time to think." She hugged me again before driving away. Call me if you need anything, okay? Anything at all. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. Mail piled on the kitchen counter. Coffee cup in the sink from my last morning. The photo of Annalyn still sitting on my nightstand, the one I'd printed and framed like some lovesick teenager. I picked it up and looked at her smiling face. Even now, knowing everything I knew, part of me still wanted to believe it had been real. I put the photo in a drawer. Not ready to throw it away, but not ready to keep looking at it either. Then I sat in my living room recliner, Margaret's favorite spot to watch TV, and tried to figure out what came next. For 18 months, my future had been crystal clear. Move to the Philippines. Marry Annalyn. Live in our house by the rice fields. Wake up every morning next to someone who loved me. Now that future was gone, and I had no backup plan. The next few days blurred together. I slept too much, ate too little, and avoided the phone calls from concerned friends and family. Word travels fast in a small community. People knew I'd gone to the Philippines to meet someone. They'd seen me excited, hopeful, transformed by love. Now they could see the aftermath, and their awkward sympathy was almost worse than the heartbreak itself. Bob from next door stopped by with a casserole his wife had made. "Hey Howard," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Heard your trip didn't go as planned." I nodded, accepting the casserole. "Thanks, Bob, and thank Carol for me." He hesitated at the door. "You know, if you want to talk about it." I shook my head. "I'm okay. Just need some time." But I wasn't okay. I was humiliated, heartbroken, and angry at myself for being both. It was Jennifer who finally snapped me out of it. She showed up unannounced on a Tuesday morning, found me still in my bathrobe at 11 a.m., and gave me the kind of tough love only a daughter can deliver. "Okay, Dad, pity party's over," she said, opening curtains and letting sunlight flood the living room. "You got scammed. It happens to smart people every day, but you can't let it define the rest of your life." "Easy for you to say," I muttered. "You didn't send your retirement money to someone who was lying about everything." Jennifer sat down across from me. "No, I didn't. But I watched my mother die slowly over 2 years. I watched you take care of her every single day, never complaining, never giving up. That's who you are, Dad. Not some victim who got fooled by a pretty face online." She was right, of course. But knowing she was right didn't make it hurt less. "I just feel so stupid, Jenny. How could I not see it? All the signs were there." She leaned forward. "Because you wanted to believe in love again. Because after 3 years of being alone, someone made you feel special. There's nothing stupid about that. What would be stupid is never trusting anyone again because of one bad experience." That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since Margaret got sick. I called Habitat for Humanity and volunteered for their next build. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent months watching someone else's house being built from 10,000 miles away, thinking it was mine. Now, I was going to help build real houses for real families who actually needed them. The first build was the following Saturday. A small ranch house for a young single mother and her 2 kids. The family showed up to help, as Habitat requires, and I watched the mother's face as we raised the walls. The joy, the disbelief, the gratitude, it was everything I'd imagined seeing on Annalyn's face when our house was finished. Except this was real. This woman would actually sleep in the house we were building. Her children would actually grow up in those rooms. Working with my hands again felt good. Measuring twice, cutting once, following blueprints that led to actual structures. Building something solid and true and permanent. No photos sent from thousands of miles away. No promises that might be lies. Just wood and nails and honest work that would shelter an honest family. At lunch break, I sat with the other volunteers. Most were retirees like me, looking for purpose in their golden years. One man, probably in his 70s, mentioned that his wife had passed away recently. "This helps," he said, gesturing toward the half-built house. "Knowing I'm still useful, still building something that matters." I understood exactly what he meant. That night, I slept better than I had since returning from the Philippines. My body was tired from honest work, and my mind was finally quiet. I was still sad about Annalyn, still embarrassed about the money, still uncertain about my future. But for the first time in weeks, I wasn't consumed by it. I was just tired from building something real for someone who deserved it. Over the following months, I threw myself into habitat builds, 4 houses in 6 months, each one different, each one a challenge, each one a reminder that real love shows up in work boots and gets its hands dirty. I wasn't building a life that didn't exist anymore. I was building lives that very much did exist, for families who needed them, in communities that welcomed them. And slowly, very slowly, I started building something for myself too. Not a house this time. Not a relationship. Just a sense of purpose that didn't depend on someone else's validation. Just the satisfaction of knowing that every nail I drove was going into something real. It's been 8 months since I came back from the Philippines. 8 months since I discovered that the house I'd been watching being built photo by photo belonged to Joel and his wife. 8 months since Annalyn disappeared from my life as suddenly as she'd entered it. People ask me if I'm over it yet, if I've moved on, if I've learned to trust again. The honest answer is, it's complicated. I still dream about that house sometimes. Not the painful dreams you might expect, not nightmares about betrayal or lost money, just quiet dreams where I'm walking through rooms I know by heart even though I was only inside them for a few minutes. The kitchen with the window facing the mountains. The bedroom where Annalyn once held up a welcome home Howie sign. The small front porch under the mango tree where I imagined us drinking coffee every morning. In these dreams, the house feels familiar, comfortable, like coming home after a long trip. When I wake up, it takes a few seconds to remember that it was never really mine. That the home I'd visualized so clearly, planned so carefully, existed only in my imagination. The real house belongs to Joel and his family, where it should belong. Where it always belonged. I can still draw the floor plan from memory. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen open to the living area, small laundry room off the back porch. I know where every electrical outlet was supposed to go, every light switch, every window. I studied those construction photos so intensively that the house is mapped in my brain like a place I actually lived. In a way, I suppose I did live there, just not physically. The habitat builds have helped more than I expected. There's something healing about building real homes for real families, watching them move in, seeing children play in yards where there used to be empty lots. Last month, I helped finish a house for an elderly veteran and his wife. When we handed over the keys, he cried. His tears were genuine, earned through honest need and honest help. Not like the tears in Annalyn's videos, which I now understand were performed for an audience of 1. Jennifer worries that I've become too cynical about love, that I've closed myself off from the possibility of finding someone real. She's probably right to worry. I'm more cautious now with online interactions, more skeptical of people who seem too good to be true. When someone messages me on Facebook or shows interest in my woodworking photos, I find myself looking for red flags instead of possibilities. But I'm not bitter. That surprises people, including myself. I thought I would be angrier about the money, more resentful about the deception. Instead, I feel something closer to sad acceptance. Annalyn was a person trying to survive in a difficult world, using the tools she had available. I was a lonely man, desperate to believe in love again. We found each other at the intersection of need and vulnerability, and the outcome was probably inevitable. The money hurts less than I expected. $24,000 is a lot, but it's not everything. I'm still comfortable, still able to volunteer my time, instead of selling it. The real loss was time and hope, and those aren't things you can get back with better bank security or more careful research. Those are things you lose when you invest your heart in something that turns out to be vapor. Sometimes I wonder what happened to Annalyn after I blocked her contacts. Did she find other lonely men to replace me? Did she eventually use the money I sent for something worthwhile, her children's education, her family's medical bills, her own future? I hope so. I hope my foolishness at least funded something real and necessary. I hope she's happy, whatever that looks like for her. The engagement ring is still in my bedroom drawer, in the same small box I carried to the Philippines. Sometimes I think about returning it, getting back the few $100s I spent on it, but I never do. It sits there like a reminder of something important, that at 67 years old, I was still capable of believing in love, still willing to risk everything for the possibility of not being alone anymore. That's not foolishness, that's courage. Would I do it again? Would I trust someone I'd never met in person, send money to someone thousands of miles away, plan a future based on promises made through a computer screen? Probably not. I'm wiser now about the difference between connection and fantasy, between love and performance. But would I close my heart completely? Give up on the possibility of finding companionship in my remaining years? I don't think so. The truth is, what I lost in the Philippines wasn't just money or time or hope. It was also loneliness. For 18 months, I woke up every morning with someone to text good morning to. I went to bed every night with someone who said she loved me. I had plans that extended beyond my next doctor's appointment or home repair project. Even if it was all fake, it felt real enough to change how I moved through my days. Now I'm alone again, but differently. I volunteer regularly. I have dinner with Jennifer and her family twice a week. I've reconnected with old friends from my carpentry days. I'm building a different kind of life, one based on actual relationships with actual people I can actually see and touch and trust. It's smaller than the dream I had with Annalyn, but it's real. Last week, I got a message on Facebook from a woman in Thailand. She'd seen my photos from a habitat build and wanted to compliment my craftsmanship. She was beautiful, articulate, interested in my work and my life. Everything about her message was perfect, too perfect. I looked at her profile for a long time, studied her photos, read her previous posts. I even drafted a friendly response. But then I closed Facebook and went outside to work in my garden instead. Not because I'll never trust again, but because I finally understand the difference between building something real and building something that exists only in my imagination. Real love, I've learned, requires more than good intentions and wire transfers. It requires presence, proximity, and the kind of truth that can only be verified by looking directly into someone's eyes. The house in Tacloban is still there, of course. Joel and his wife are probably enjoying their evening coffee on the front porch right now, watching the sunset over the rice fields. Their children are probably playing in the front yard under the mango tree. It's exactly the life I imagined living, just with different people actually living it. People who earned it through honest work and patient saving. People who belong there. I'm glad it's theirs. I'm glad something real and beautiful came from all those construction photos, even if I wasn't part of the final story. In a strange way, I helped build their happiness, even if I didn't know it at the time. That has to count for something. That has to mean something. I still know every room of that house by heart. I probably always will. But now, I understand that knowing the floor plan of a house isn't the same as having a home. Home is something you build with presence, with truth, with someone who chooses to stay even when the initial excitement fades. Home is something I'm still learning how to construct, one honest day at a time. The dream house was beautiful, but it was never really mine, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the real house I'm building now, this life of volunteer work and family dinners and quiet evenings reading in Margaret's old chair, maybe this house is enough. Maybe this house is home. I'm still working on the blueprints.